Welcome to the lecture. In this lecture, we will cover about understanding human behavior, controlling and directing human behavior, models of organizational behavior. Dear learner, in the third lecture of our series, we will understand about human behavior from biological foundations to organizational models. Today, we will discuss about one of the most complex subjects of social science, human behavior. Human behavior. Understanding why people act the way they do is not just an academic exercise, it is the cornerstones of effective management, effective leadership, and effective social harmony. Over the next hour, we will uncover the layers of biological, psychological, and social influences that shape our daily actions and explore how these behaviors are channelized within professional organizations. What we learn by the end of this session, where you should be able to define human behavior and identify its core drivers, analyze the biopsychosocial model as a framework for understanding actions, able to differentiate between various environmental conditionings theories, evaluate the methods used to observe and interpret behavior. You can explain the importance of directing and controlling behavior in management. Also, compare and contrast the five major models of organizational behavior, where autocratic, custodial, supportive, collegial, and system model. What exactly do when we talk about human behavior? In its simplest terms, human behavior refers to the complex and dynamic ways in which individuals or group thinks, feel, and act. These actions occur in response to two things: internal states such as hunger or emotion needs and external stimuli such as environmental, social situation, teacher's question or a change in the weather. It is important to note that behavior spans is the entire human lifespan. It is not static, it evolves as we grow. But is behavior random? Science suggests it is not random. Behavior emerges from structured interactions of biological systems, psychological process, and social context. At its core, we are driven by fundamental needs, whether it is the need for survival, social belonging, achievements, or self-fulfillment. These needs act as the engine for our motivations. They guide our decision making, color our emotional responses, and define our interpersonal relationship. To understand behavior, we cannot look at a single factor in isolation. Instead, we use the biopsychosocial model. This model validated that human behavior is a result of three-way interaction. First, we have biological factors. These are the hardware of our existence: our genetics, brain structure, hormones, and neurochemistry. The second, we have psychological factors. This is the software of our personality, cognition, emotions, and mental health. And third one, we have social factors. These are the network, our social family, environment, and societal norms. Think of it in this way: if a person reacts angrily to a minor inconvenience, it is because they are tired. Here we can see biological factor. It happening because they have a short-tempered personality, which is psychological factor, or because they grow up in an environment where aggression was a standard response. Here in invoice social factors. So we can see clearly The answer is usually a combination of all three factors. Let's focus on biological factor. Biology is the canvas upon which behavior is painted. Genetics, for instance, play a massive role in our temperament and intelligence. They even influence our susceptibility to certain behaviors, such as risk taking. Beyond genetics, we must consider brain chemistry. Neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine act as chemical messengers. Serotonin often influences our mood regulation, while dopamine is central to our reward processing and motivation. When these are out of balance, behavior changes significantly. For example, adrenaline dictates our fight or flight response during stress, while oxytocin plays a role in bonding and trust. These biological mechanisms help explain why two people might respond very differently to the exact same situation. While biology provides the foundation, the environment provides the blueprint. Human behavior is significantly shaped by our interactions with the world around us. This is often explained through conditioning. First, we have classical conditioning. This explains how we learn through association. In a workplace, a certain notification sound on a phone can trigger a stress response because we associate it with an urgent email from a boss. Second, we have operant conditioning, developed by B.F. Skinner. This focuses on how rewards and punishments reinforce or discourage behaviors. If a behavior is rewarded, we are likely to repeat it. If it is punished, we tend to avoid it. Finally, there is social learning. We don't just learn by doing, we learn by watching. We observe and imitate others, particularly role models. We have discussed the body and the environment, but what about the mind? Behavior is heavily influenced by internal mental processes. Perception are our filters. They shape how we interpret reality. Two people can look at the same set of data and see two different stories about based on their perceptions. Thought patterns then take over, affecting our decision making and problem solving. Closely tied to these are emotions. Our feelings act as a compass for our reactions and motivation. Finally, we cannot ignore past experiences. Our history creates biases and expectations. If a previous project failed, our behavior towards a new similar project will be guided by the caution and anxiety born from the past experience. A fascinating aspect of human behavior is that we are communicating even when we are silent. In fact, a large portion of behavior is expressed non-verbally. This includes body language, posture, facial expressions, and eye contact. Even our gestures and the tone of voice we use can change the meaning of our words entirely. Why is this important? Because nonverbal clues often reveal true feelings and interactions more accurately than spoken words. If a team member says they are fine with a decision but avoids eye contact and crosses their arms, their behavior is telling a different story. Recognizing these clues is essential for anyone trying to interpret and understanding human behavior in depth. Human behavior is not a finished product. It is a work in progress. It evolves across several developmental stages. In infancy and childhood stage, behavior is centered on learning, attachment, and basic socialization. During adolescence, the focus shifts to identity formation and learning to regulate complex emotions. As we move into adulthood, behavior is often driven by responsibility, productivity, and cultivation of long-term relationships. In old stage, behavior is characterized by reflection, adaptation to physical changes, and coping with the loss of peers. Each stage presents unique developmental tasks. Understanding where a person is in their life cycle help us understand why they behave in the way they do. How do we move from guessing to knowing? For professionals, use there is four systematic approaches. First is observation. This is the systematic recording of actions and reactions in different situations to identify patterns. Second, contextual analysis. We must remember that the same action can have different meanings depending on cultural or situation. For example, silence in meetings might mean agreement in one culture and disagreement in another. Third is active learning, active listening. This goes beyond just hearing words. It involves concentrating on the underlying emotions and responding thoughtfully. This reveals the why behind the what. Finally, we have psychological analysis. This involves examining personality traits, cognitive biases, and motivation to understand a person's underlying behavioral tendencies. Now, let's pivot to the organizational context. In management, we don't just want to understand behavior, we want to guide it. This is where directing and controlling is come. These are not about manipulation but about alignment. These functions ensure that individuals are motivated and that their actions contribute to the efficiency and ethical conduct of the situation of institutions. Directing is the influence part. It's about leadership and communication. Controlling is the measurement part. It's about monitoring performance and making sure it aligns with planned objectives. Directing is an action-oriented function. It involves three key elements. First, leadership. Different styles affect behavior differently. An autocratic leader makes decisions alone, which might be efficient but can stifle morale. A democratic leader encourages participation, which boosts engagement. A laissez-faire leader gives a high autonomy, which works well with the highly skilled, self-motivated experts. Second, motivation. We use theories like Maslow's hierarchy of needs to understand what energizes an employee. Do they need basic security or they looking for self-actualization? Similarly, Husberg's two-factor theory helps us distinguish between things that prevent dissatisfaction, hygiene factors, and things that actually create satisfaction, motivators. Third, communication. Clear instructions reduce misunderstanding and foster the cooperation necessary for success. Controlling is the result-oriented counterpart to directing. It ensures that the actual performance matches the plan. We use several techniques here. Budgetary control keeps a check on financial resources. Performance appraisal provides a systematic evaluation of an employee's work over time, identify strengths and training needs. Supervision provides the day-to-day oversight needed to catch problems early. And the last one, standard operating procedures. It provides the written instructions that ensure consistency and reduce errors. What is the ultimate impact of these management functions? They promote discipline and accountability. They enhance efficiency by reducing wastage and duplication. They reduce errors and misconduct through early detection. They create a structured work environment where roles are clear. They improve employee satisfaction because feedback is constructive and expectations are transparent. Organizational behavior is not a one size fits all concept. Over time, different philosophies or models have emerged. These models dictate how managers view their employees and how employees in turn respond. We will explore five distinct models, moving from the most traditional to the most modern. The autocratic model is built on a foundation of power. In this environment, authority is formal and official. The guiding principle is you do this or else. The manager's orientation is one or of command. Consequently, the employee's orientation is obedience to the boss. They are not following the manager out of respect, but out of a need for survival. The psychological result is a deep dependency on the boss, who holds the absolute power to hire or fire. Because the employee is only looking to satisfy basic survival needs, they typically provide a minimum performance required to keep their job. While it can be effective in crisis situations, it rarely fosters innovation or long-term loyalty. As managers realized that the autocratic model leads to frustration and aggression, the custodial model emerged. This model depends on economic resources. Here, the focus shifts from power to money. The organization provides wages, pensions, and benefits to meet the employee's security needs. The psychological result is that the employee becomes dependent on the organization rather than an individual boss. While this removes the fear found in the autocratic model, it leads to passive cooperation. Employees are happy with their benefits, but they are not necessarily driven to excel. They are preoccupied with their economic rewards. The supportive model moves away from both power and money, focusing instead on leadership. The core idea is that management should create a climate that helps employees grow and achieve. In this model, the leader assumes that workers are not naturally passive. They only become passive if the work climate is unsupportive. If you give them a chance, they will take responsibility. The psychological result is a feeling of participation and task involvement. Employees start saying we instead of they because their needs for status and recognition are being met, their internal drives for work and awakened. The collegial model is an extension of the supportive model often used in professional and creative environments. The term collegial refers to a body of people working together as equals. The basis here is partnership. Managers are seen as joint contributors or coaches rather than bosses. The orientation is toward teamwork. The employee's response is responsible behavior. They produce quality work not because they are told to, but because they feel an internal obligations to the team. The psychological result is self-discipline. This leads to a sense of self-actualization and moderate enthusiasm in their performance. The most modern approach is the system model. This emerged because today's employees seek higher meaning. They want more than just a paycheck. They want a work context characterized by ethics, integrity, and trust. In this model, managers show compensation and sensitivity to a diverse workforce. In response, employees feel a sense of psychological ownership for the organization. They move beyond the self-discipline of the collegial model into a state of self-motivation. The needs met here are the highest order: autonomy and self-actualization. This model engenders deep passion and commitment. Employees feel importance and believe in the system's contribution to the common good. Let's look at this comprehensive table to compare these five models side by side. Note how the basis of the model shifts from power to money, then to leadership, then to partnership, and finally to trust and community in the system model. Observe the employee orientation. It moves from mere obedience to security, then to job performance, then responsible behavior, and ultimately the psychological ownership. Finally, look at the performance result. We go from minimum in the autocratic model to passive cooperation, then awakened drivers, enthusiasm, and finally passion and commitment. So, reflective question is here. Which model do you think is most prevalent in modern tech companies compared to traditional manufacturing plants? So, the answer is modern tech companies often lean towards a collegial or system models to foster innovation, whereas traditional manufacturing might still utilize elements of the custodial and supportive models for consistency and security. Today, we have learned the biological roots of behavior to the complex model of organizational structure. We have seen that understanding human behavior requires a biopsychosocial perspective. We have learned about managing behavior involves a delicate balance of directing through leadership and controlling through systematic standards. Finally, we explored how organizational models have evolved from power-based systems to those based on partnership and shared meaning. Understanding these concepts is the first step towards becoming an effective leader who can not only predict behavior but also inspire it. By recognizing the needs of your team, whether they are for security, recognition, or self actualization, you can choose the model that best fits your organizational goals. Thank you for your attention. We appreciate your engagement and look forward to fostering a deeper understanding of human behavior.